You regret those words. It is too late to take them back. That it is. Here I come that I do. Then she kicked off the ground with a boom and flung herself at Aints in a ball. Anyone human-sized taking the wise king of the forest's body slammed directly, without using any martial arts, would normally have been blown away. But Aints blocked it with a great sword. It was a terrible amount of destructive power, but Aints' strength was more than up to the task of enduring it. Arg, that I say. Shouting in surprise that Aints hadn't retreated so much as a step, the wise king of the forest raised her front legs. They had unexpectedly sharp claws. She began to scratch. Aints beat back the attack with the great sword in his left hand and slashed with the other in his right. He didn't go all out, but it was still a hefty blow, and it was repelled with a screech. The shock went up his arm. The wise king of the forest had brandished a foot to counter Aints' attack. Their strikes clashed in midair and repelled each other. Magnificent that it was. And how about this, charm species? Undead were generally immune to psychic attacks. Ignoring the spell completely, he stabbed with both of his great swords simultaneously. A metallic screech rang out, and Aints' swords were repelled once more. He squinted under his helmet. He wasn't trying too hard, but the wise king of the forest was repelling his attacks with her skin alone. It must have been harder than low-grade metals. So she's not just a fluffy fur ball. Aints felt momentarily betrayed, but he realized that thought wasn't appropriate for combat, and cleared it away. Considering his physical attack strength by Yggdrasil standards, Aints estimated that he would be equivalent to about a level 30 warrior, maybe a little higher. Of course, his magic and gear made a big difference, so he couldn't be sure, but if he used that as the bar and compared the wise king's combat ability to it, they were probably close to equal. The illusionary face under his helmet twisted into a sinister smile. Nothing wrong with that. This is a good chance to test out my close-quarters combat ability. He judged that he would be able to win without a problem if he put real effort into it. He couldn't let his guard down, but this opponent was good for practicing frontline swordsmanship. Aints brandished each of his great swords in turn. The wise king of the forest deftly blocked them with her front claws. Then one of the markings on her body glowed as she cast a spell. Blindness. Unlike the psychic spell charm species, blindness would work on Aints. However, he had a racial skill that neutralized all low-level magic, so the spell disappeared without having any effect. The marking that lit up was different from last time. It seems like she can only use as many spells as the number of markings she has. In Yggdrasil, the amount of spells a monster could use varied a great deal depending on their level and race, but it was generally around 8. Aints counted the markings on the wise king of the forest. The number was about what he expected, so he felt like he was fighting a monster from Yggdrasil. The wise king of the forest was unconcerned by the resistance to her magic. She closed in to fight with her front legs. Aints blocked with one sword and kept attacking with the other. The way some of his guildmates used to fight crossed his mind. Touch Me was one of the strongest warriors in Yggdrasil. He used a sword and shield. Nishiki Enrai had the highest attack power in the guild. She wielded 2 katana named Amaterasu and Tsukuyomi. The warrior Take Mikazuchi, who said no second strike necessary, even though it wasn't true, used 2 different dachi. Imperial sword Zanshin and Take Mikazuchi style, 8 served different purposes. Then, he remembered someone he'd met more recently, the brave captain of the Royal Select, Gaze of Stronov. It was possible that the reason Aints headed to Rantel in the guise of a warrior had something to do with him. He sneered at himself for thinking such things. It was a thought that occurred to him in a corner of his mind. You ray in the middle of a fight, even if I can afford to do it. Thinking about stuff that's off topic is just rude, even if she is a hamster. Aints attacked over and over, trying to emulate the memories of his friends. He deftly blocked the wise king of the forest's claws with the great sword in his left hand. It seemed like neither one of them would land a decisive blow, when suddenly Aints managed to penetrate the wise king of the forest's defenses. What? The sensation of his blade piercing flesh was accompanied by the smell of fresh blood. The great sword in Aints' right hand had made a small rip in the wise king of the forest's skin. A handful of hairs hung in the air. Aints tried to follow up with a blow from the sword in his left hand, but the wise king of the forest leaped backward, as if she sensed it. Then, in a flurry of footfalls, she retreated to a position a little more than 10 yards away. He did say his hamster would jump and escape his cage, but wow, I had no idea hamsters could run backward like that. Aints was letting his mind wander, feeling exactly like he was fighting a giant hamster, when the wise king of the forest suddenly got into a low crouch. Aints wasn't too sure what to make of it. What is she planning to do at that distance? If she's going to charge again like before, I should stick out my sword so she impales herself, but I suppose it's more likely that she casts another spell. He didn't think the wise king of the forest's wriggling tail would reach, but I was wrong. He realized how foolish he'd been. The first tail strike had come from even farther away. This meant he was well within range this time. The bizarrely long tail did indeed strike, tracing a large arc through the air. He blocked it with the great sword in his right hand. Then his eyes widened. The tail turned at a right angle with his sword as the axis. NGH, he swung his sword sideways to shake off the tail, but he hadn't reacted fast enough. He heard it graze the armor on his back at the same time as he felt the impact. Thanks to a racial skill, even if the tail had pierced his armor, he wouldn't have taken too much damage from an attack of that intensity. Still, it was like missing one shot in a level of a shoot-em-up game. So we've each connected once, that we have, you damned hamster, thought Aints with mild irritation. I can attack at range too, you know. He poured energy into his right hand. As he was preparing to attack, the wise king of the forest expressed her heartfelt admiration. Your armor is tremendous, that it is. But your strength, your sword, everything about you is astonishing. Truly magnificent, a superior warrior. You must be well known in the human world, that you must. All the energy drained out of Aints' right hand. You think I am just a warrior? He asked, with a hint of disappointment. What do you mean, What else would you be? A knight, The wise king of the forest is not so bright. I should be known this was a bust from the moment I saw it was a giant hamster. It was probably difficult to tell that Aints was a caster when he was wearing full plate armor. But he wanted a monster with the name Wise King of the Forest to at least have had an inkling that something was off. Even if she couldn't see through the disguise completely, did she think those spells were being neutralized through sheer will alone? It is true that immunity and resistance had the same end result in Yggdrasil. But would it kill this thing to live up to her name as a wise king? The name Wise King of the Forest is just not appropriate here. If she had been called a giant Jungarian hamster, I wouldn't have bothered getting my hopes up. The blame lies squarely on the parent who named her. It is blatant false advertising, a misleading representation. Aints had completely lost the will to fight and let his sword droop. What do you think you're doing, You can possibly you wouldn't dare give up before the victor is decided, would you? Take me seriously, that you must. We shall fight to the death, that we shall. Every time the miffed-wise king of the forest opened her mouth and missed the point, it chipped away at something in Aints' brain. Taking into account the fact that any large mental swings would be prevented, he could probably still fight. But I am done, Aints uttered in a voice so cool it seemed to be accompanied by a frigid cold front. He pointed the sword in his right hand and unleashed an ability aura of despair. A chance of instatus felt a little overkill, so he chose the weaker fear-inducing Tier I spell instead of Tier V. A wind whipped up around Aints, and a chill that only affected the mind radiated into the area. The moment the chill made contact with the wise king of the forest, all her hairs stood on end, and she keeled over with astonishing force. This left her soft silver belly completely unguarded. I surrender, she said. It is my loss. Ah, so you really are just an animal, Aints replied in a hoarse, spiritless voice. He walked over to the wise king of the forest to stare down at her belly while he contemplated his next move. She is a monster from this world, so it would be a waste to shoo her away. Plus, she is a hamster, so maybe she could be like a pet. The other option would be to make good use of her corpse. Aints had acquired the class of necromancer. They could tamper with dead bodies to create undead familiars. However, the strength of the undead depended on the race of the corpse. The best corpses came from powerful beings like dragons. Humans and similar creatures would become zombies or skeletons. What kind of undead would a monster that didn't exist in Yggdrasil turn into? Perhaps a great zombie king of the forest. Are you going to kill her? A cheerful voice called out. Aura had shown up and stood next to Narborough. If you are, I'd like to skin her. She seems to have a pretty nice pelt. Aints looked down at the wise king of the forest's glistening black eyes. Their gazes met. The monster quietly awaited her fate. She was so scared that her whiskers were trembling. Aints suddenly recalled their conversation, the one about friends that had struck a chord with him. He wavered, but then sighed as he made up his mind. My real name is Aints Ulgaun. If you serve me, I'll let you live. I thank you that I do. In exchange for sparing my life, I give you absolute devotion that I do me, the wise king of the forest, to you, the great warrior Aints Ulgaun. Aura watched, disappointed, as the wise king of the forest jumped up and swore her loyalty. When they emerged from the forest, everyone who had been awaiting their safe return gathered around to congratulate them on making it out in one piece. Luckrat was the only one who looked uneasy. Enfira's surprise and admiration got all jumbled together. You don't even have a scratch. Did you manage to avoid a fight in the first place? As Aints was about to answer him, Luckrat butted in. Hey Momon, someone is following you there. It's not charmed. I fought the wise king of the forest and forced her to surrender. The wise king of the forest, with her pearl white hair, came out of the woods, slowly revealing herself. The swords of darkness, jaws dropped in awe, readied their weapons and fell back a step, shielding Enfira. Well, even if she is a Jungarian hamster, you don't usually see ones this huge. Her round eyes may be cute, but at this size they ray oppressive. It is only natural that the adventurers would take precautions to protect their client. Aints made his voice purposely kinder. Don't worry. She is completely under my command, so she won't be going on any rampages. Then he moved closer to the wise king of the forest and ran a hand over her back, although the gesture seemed forced. Right you are, master. I, the wise king of the forest, will follow my master and do his bidding. I swear to him that I will not cause trouble for everyone. The wise king of the forest professed her loyalty. Right now, they might be wary because of her size, but she is still an adorable Jungarian hamster. Once they get used to her, they'll relax. The problem is how to get them to believe she is really the wise king of the forest. Aints was fresh out of ideas, but it turned out he was worried for nothing. So this is the wise king of the forest? Wow, what a magnificent magical beast. Huh, Aints looked first at Ninya, then at the wise king of the forest. He wondered if it was sarcasm, but Ninya's face was flush with amazement. He didn't look at all like he was joking. Phew, the wise king of the forest, the name is quite apt. Even just standing here, I can sense how mighty she is. Dine sounded deeply moved. What, mighty? Man, you really got me this time. If you can pull this off, then you're definitely strong enough to be going around with Nabe. If we have gone up against a magical beast of this caliber, we would all been killed, but I expect nothing less from you, Momon. Amazing, Luckrat and Peter. Awash in everyone's praise, Aints took another look at the wise king of the forest. She is a huge, Jungarian hamster. That was all he could think. Why did they find her menacing? But don't you think her eyes are adorable? The second he asked, everyone's eyes nearly popped out of their heads. Apparently he said something outrageous. Momon, you think this magical beast's eyes are cute? What else would I think? Aints grumbled in his mind. He nodded emphatically and wondered if the wise king of the forest might have some kind of passive skill that was bewitching everyone. I can believe it. But that's Momon for you. Ninya, what do you think when you see those eyes? I sense a profound wisdom and great strength. I don't think I could ever think they were cute. Aints had no words. He looked at each party member, and it seemed that all present felt the same way. He felt the foundations of his worldview crumbling. Nabe, what do you think? I don't know about strength, but I certainly sense power. What the? Everyone's eyes twinkled at Aints as they peppered him with praise for being so brave that he could declare such a fearsome beast's eyes cute. Aints looked at those eyes a few times and wondered where this wisdom was hiding. Could turning undead have thrown off his aesthetic sense? If everyone else but him felt differently, it was certainly possible. Just to be thorough, he asked one more question. By the way, do you think rats are amazing too? Rats, you mean giant rats? Not particularly. They're just your run-of-the-mill monsters. They hang out in the sewers of Rantle. Giant rats carry scary diseases. And then there are were-rats. You can hurt them unless you have a silver weapon, so I guess that's pretty amazing. Hamsters and rats look practically the same. Plus, with her long tail, the wise king of the forest looks more like a rat than a hamster. After racking his brains, Aints concluded, this world is a bit strange. As he was fretting about the differences between this world and the one he used to live in, Enfira voiced a concern. But if you take her away, 1T the territory free up. 1T monsters attack Enna Khan. Aints jerked his chin at the wise king of the forest, and the beast took the hint. Khan is that village, isn't it? He paused, thinking. The balance of power in the forest is currently upset. Even if I stayed, I wouldn't be able to ensure their safety. No, I would not. But Aints said nothing in response to Enfira's shock. He just grinned to himself. The king of the forest may have been a bust, but Aints could make up for it here. He could feel Enfira's eyes on him while he plotted what direction to lead the conversation in. The boy was opening and closing his mouth as if he wanted to say something. It was clear to Aints that he wanted him to save the village again, but that sentiment was competing with the feeling that he didn't want to be a bother or fall back on him forever. Behind him, the swords of darkness had begun bouncing ideas off of one another about how to save the village, but then Enfira seemed to muster his resolve. Momon, he said with a solemn expression on his face. What is it? Aints was practically licking his lips. Khan was valuable to him as a foothold. He'd been intending to save the village from the beginning, but it was important that they felt like they were relying on him. He could kill two birds with one stone here. He could get Enfira to feel indebted to him and collect a reward. That was Aints' plan. He intended it to compensate for his losses in the wise king of the forest affair. But what Enfira said was far afield of Aints' expectations. Momon, please let me join your team. I want to protect Enna the village, but the way I am now, I don't have the power, so I want to get stronger. I want you to teach me how to obtain even a sliver of your strength. I just don't have the means to hire such a brilliant adventurer as yourself, so please let me join your team. I am pretty confident about my knowledge of medicine, and I'll carry your bags or do whatever you ask, so please, I beg you. While Aints was blinking his non-existent eyes in shock, Enfira continued, I studied all my life to be an apothecary. My grandmother is one and my deceased father was one, so I didn't really consider my options before starting out. But now I know what I really want to do, and it's not be an apothecary. You want to get stronger as a caster and protect Khan? Yes. The eyes of a man, not a boy, fixated on him. In Aints' Yggdrasil days, there had been a never-ending stream of people wanting to join his guild. Most of them considered the personal gains they could get by joining one of the most elite guilds, not what they could do for their guild, but what the guild could do for them. There were even jerks who schemed to get in and steal intelligence or rare magical items. For that reason, after the early group had coalesced, new members were almost never admitted. They were wary of outsiders mucking up the things they worked so hard to build. But the pure intentions of this boy, who had never heard of the guild Aints Ulgaun, were charming. He was different from those earlier applicants. Aha! Aints burst into a cheerful laugh. Ha 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 ha. It was an extremely amicable and invigorating laugh. When he was done, he removed his helmet and made a deep, sincere and respectful bow. Narbril gasped audibly. Perhaps it wasn't appropriate behavior for her master, the absolute ruler of the great tomb of Nazarick, but Aints had felt he should bow, so he did without hesitation. He felt no shame for bowing to a boy half his age. There was no malice in his laughter, but he still shouldn't have laughed. Even Aints knew that. Once he straightened up, he told the stunned Enfira, I am sorry I laughed. Know that I wasn't making fun of your determination. There are two conditions for joining my team, and you only fulfill one of them, so unfortunately, I can admit you. There was also a hidden condition. The majority of guild members had to be in agreement with the addition, so even if he wanted to, he couldn't make any new guildmates. Even so, he continued, in a good humor, similar to the time all the floor guardians of Nazarick professed their loyalty to him. I understand your feelings well enough. I will always remember you as the boy who wanted to join my team, and as for protecting Khan, I think I can give you a hand with that, but I may need your help. Yes, please. Okay then, okay. As Aints was nodding, his eyes met Ninja's for a moment. It made him uncomfortable to be gazed at with warm fuzzies. Well, let us continue that conversation a bit later. First, I have an exciting proposition for you now that I've bent the wise king of the forest to my will. They spent one night on the road back to Khan and one night in the village. Then they left for Rantel early in the morning to complete their 2-night, 3-day itinerary. When they arrived, the city was just beginning to put on its evening face. On the main street, continual light lamps threw white glows. The people walking were gradually changing to a different sort. Young women and children were gone. Most of the pedestrians were men on their way home from work. Lively voices and warm lights spilled out of the establishments lining either side of the street. Aints took it all in. It didn't he seem like the city had changed in the 2 days he'd been gone. He'd left for Khan the day after he arrived, so he didn't have much knowledge of or fondness for it. Even so, he felt that nothing was different about the peaceful cityscape. The party halted for a moment, one road behind the main street. They might have been in the way, stopping in the middle of the street, but no one was close enough to complain. People were steering clear of them, actually. Aints peered at them feebly, with his back rounded. Almost everyone going by stared at them. No, they stared directly at Aints and whispered to one another. He could hear them, and he felt like everyone was having a laugh at his expense. But that was just his paranoia.